Hi, kiddo. How was your day? This was a tricky one. Well, some days you gotta work with what you got. I guess if it's one of those, you gotta work with something that you don't got. That's definitely a thing you can do. I'm sure there's a problem you have solved with resources that were not all that available to you. Uh huh. And then, what did you do? See? Sounds like you got the nail soup nailed down. The nail soup. What, you never heard of that one? Huh, could have sworn I told you someday or the other. It's an old folk tale. It is low key a recipe as well, but since it is a folk tale, the recipe kind of varies a little. You know I'd love to. So, once upon a time, there was a terrible old lady. I don't know actually why it's always the old ladies, but that's one of the upsides of folk tales. They're changed and fixed and moderated by us regular folks. So, okay, this once upon a time, there was a terrible old grumpy man. Terrible, as in not very nice, and also quite stingy with money. Yes, and canonically, this grumpy old man had quite enough of money. He was doing well for himself, and yet he did not want to spend a dime, not on himself, and certainly not on anyone else. Late one evening, as the rain was pouring down and the winds were howling, this grumpy old man heard three knocks at his door. Yes, this night he was visited by a a poor man. Yes, a poor man. Hobo of sorts. He didn't look much, but he asked very kindly if he could maybe come in from the terrible weather, pretty please. Of course, the grumpy old man answered grumpily that he certainly wasn't running any sort of motel and would not take anyone in for any reason. Yet this one time, somehow, his heart softened. Maybe it was the capital rain. Maybe it was the kindness in the eyes of his strength. I mean, maybe it was the fact that he promised that all he wanted was to sleep on the floor before a fireplace instead of outside in the cold rain. Yeah, that wouldn't be much of a story, would it? Just fall asleep right there. So, instead, once he was dry finally, warm, he asked very humbly if maybe there would be a possibility to eat something. Yeah, at this point, the old man showed his grump in full flare. Over my dead body, he said. I hardly have enough to even feed myself. How would you believe, even, that I would have anything for you? Clearly, he was not a fan, but the stranger was unperturbed. He said he was sorry and explained that he simply wanted to borrow some cookware. He could very easily make food himself. You see, he brought a nail from which he would make a fine soup. Uh-huh. That would be the name from the title of this story. I guess I failed to mention it, but it's something along the lines of a soup from a nail. I guess you could say that is the title, since I'm the one telling it, and that's how these things go. Anyway, this idea of cooking a soup from a nail got the old grumpy man, well, stunned for starters, but very curious. He did realize that this seemed to be the cheapest soup he had ever even heard of in his life. So, he produced a kettle of some sort and some water to go with the nail. In it goes. And it's just, there. It did boil eventually, and well, I don't know what to call him, the hobo? I feel like that's, well, it's, yeah. So anyway, he stirred the pot meticulously, now and then, as if he was very precise about it. And so after a while, he grabbed a spoon, took a little bit of the boiled water, blew on it, and tasted it. He was very happy with the result. This, he said, will make a fine soup. Well, before the old man actually tasted it himself, he said, well, I mean, it would obviously be even finer with some grain and maybe some milk. But if that's not available, the soup will absolutely be very fine anyway. Yes, so, of course, the old man agreed to find some milk and some grain. In it goes into the pot, and some stirring, some waiting, some boiling, and after a while, you taste the broth again. It's exquisite, he said. I mean, would be more exquisite, of course, if there could be just a little bit of salt in it. The old man laughed. Obviously, a little bit of salt is a small price to pay for a full kettle of soup. So, he fetched a little bit of salt. Yeah, I think you can tell where this is going. So after a while, he tastes it again and says something along the lines of, "Oh, this is a soup fine enough for a nobleman." Obviously, if we had, say, maybe some vegetables and a little tiny bit of some sort of meat, and maybe even some butter to fry it all up together, that would make a soup fit for a king. But there's, of course, no need for that. Indeed. And so, the soup fit for a king was finished. The chef carefully extracted the nail from the soup and put it aside. And so they both had their fill, and the grumpy old man ate with plenty of appetite and was in fact not so grumpy anymore. That's a good question. The appetite of the chef is actually not mentioned, and I think it's a little hard to pin down. On one hand, he seemed to be starving. On the other hand, he seems to care about how he presents himself, so it makes sense to leave it out. I think how he presents himself is important both for him in the story and for the story itself. I mean, how would you describe that character? That's right. He is a sly underdog. He has ingenuity, but he's also a con man fooling the elderly. How he is presented means a lot, and I think that if we ever try to emulate this man, it is important for us as well to take out the nail from the soup before we serve it. Well, the thing is, this grumpy old man who will do nothing good for anyone, not even himself, he clearly needed some real, actually a little bit expensive food. Like, he had a great appetite, and it's an important point. Yeah, in a way, this is good for everyone involved. I don't know if all underdogs who are poor and starving really need to care about everybody else at all times, but I think it can be dangerous to assume that we, who are not that person, at least not strictly speaking, we shouldn't assume ourselves to be in the right of doing something. Like, at least the default, I think, should be to care about other people and see them as real human beings with, well, needs and desires. Yeah, being sly is well and good, but Main character syndrome is a little bit of a slippery slope, I think. Oh, well, there was actually a little bit more to it. After the good meal, the stranger was offered a warm bed, and they both slept quite well. The next morning, as he was taking his leave, the old man thanked him for teaching him the cheapest recipe known to man, and even paid him with a shiny silver coin for that one piece of wisdom he had not found anywhere else. And that is how it ends. I mean, he was more or less buying the thing he thought he was, and it didn't exactly hit him where it hurts. He was clearly fine. But, it's a little bit interesting, let's put it like that. Yeah, that's why I think main character syndrome is something to watch out with. And as a rule, if you ever need soup for some reason, maybe ask a nice person or even a friend. You can always come to me for both soup and a warm bed. I have never actually tried it. I feel like the only thing you would gain from it is some sort of random bacterias. Sure, maybe some iron or something. But to be quite honest, I have better, less metaphorical recipes we could try out. My care for you is expressed in many ways, and apparently nowadays one of them is I don't want to make food with the things from the garage in it. I suppose you could. Let's put that in the maybe pile, shall we? Maybe I am a bit overbearing sometimes, but you know how it is. I love you, and if that comes across as a bit overbearing now and then, as long as you eat when you need to, and as long as I still get to take care of you, and it's good for you in the end, then that's how my story goes, I think. Well, you know I love you in whatever way that works. If I do ever become a grumpy, unkind old man, then know that the love for you is always there, some way, somehow. Well, I say that because I know that, and I'm me, so I should be considered somewhat an expert on the subject. For a fact, I've known me longer than you have, so I can say with absolute certainty that I do love you and I always will. If you ever find yourself unsure of that, you be sure to tell me, okay? No matter what the situation, I will do my very best to convince you. I want that to be something that you can rely on. I'll always love you, kiddo. Tricksy days, rainy days, sly days. I'm here, I